Mailbag, Jesse, are you ready for some rapid fire?
Let's take this thing home with some rapid fire.
All right, my man, here we go. Leading off today, let's talk a little Senior Bowl. So Notre Dame's Riley Leonard, Jack Kiser, and RJ Oben are participating in this week's Senior Bowl activities. This is a very important event for guys with NFL aspirations. So far, their participation is blank.
Is tremendous, to be honest with you. I've seen Jack Kiser make an interception over the middle. I've seen him work off of, a block and make a tackle on a screen play on the perimeter, kind of showing his quickness and, elusiveness. And then I've seen some clips of on that same interception that Kiser had, RJ Oben got pressure on the quarterback and I think would have had a sack, but obviously at the Senior Bowl, you just touch him and let him finish the play.
Yeah.
So, he's obviously having a good showing. And then Riley Leonard as well. I've seen some good clips of him. He was under center, hit a nice drop back pass over the middle. I saw that I think another video today where he was like commanding the huddle and working through some nice, progressions and plays. So, I think all they've done this week has tremendously improved their stock. Like their stock hasn't gotten any worse, and it maybe hasn't climbed, a full round by any means, but it definitely is, I think, answering some questions, and I think they're all passing the overall eye test, right? Like, I don't think anyone is coming out of the Senior Bowl and been like, man, we feel differently about Kiser, Leonard and Oben in a bad way, right? I think they're only feeling better about, or feeling differently in a positive way about these guys. So I think it's been a tremendous experience for them. And I love the Reese Senior Bowl. Honestly, one of my bucket list items is to go to one of them for a couple of days. I think it'd just be fun to go down there and like, just watch practice and see some of those guys. It's cool, and it's just the concept or the idea of it is really cool. Helping out, a lot of these senior guys who are on the edge, like a Jack Kiser, a guy who's played college football for 5 or 6 years, obviously has a bunch of talent, and he's right on that fringe of, is he going to be an NFL starter, or is he going to, be a guy that can make a career in the NFL?
And, of course, Marcus Freeman was down there to watch his guys do their thing, which, I don't know how many head coaches take the time to go down, especially this time of year when they're on the road and they're recruiting and they're doing all those things. Because, obviously, Marcus Freeman, if you are on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is now, if you're on there, you know that him and his assistant coaches are all over the country, doing school visits, doing home visits, doing all of the above. And he takes the time to go to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Like, that's just who Marcus Freeman is. Like, if you ever wonder, is it a show? Is it an act? He didn't have to go to Mobile. Like, those guys aren't on his team anymore. You know what I mean? And he's down there supporting those guys. So I thought that was pretty cool. Look, the entire situation, from what I've been able to ascertain from watching some of the clips and things like that, like, people aren't shy about saying who's doing poorly.
Right.
That's for sure. Shiloh Sanders isn't having a great week down at the East-West Shrine Bowl festivities. But it appears as though the 3 Notre Dame guys are all doing well. And they're, they showed Riley Leonard taking a snap from under center, which obviously he didn't do at Notre Dame. Going through his progressions, making good throws. Jack Kiser's turning some heads, making plays, getting a pick off of Jaden Milroe, which I thought was fantastic. So, those guys are going to be missed. There's no doubt about that. And they're making a name for themselves right now. And we know that the Senior Bowl, like, practices and stuff are way more important than the actual game itself. While I'm looking forward to the game on Saturday and trying to get, my eyes on it,
that's practice not even, is basically an open combine.
That's exactly right. Because there's NFL coaches everywhere at the Senior Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, you're being coached by NFL coaches. There's NFL coaches that are stopping by to check things out. And if people didn't know it before, coaching is a giant fraternity. Like, guys share information about other guys. Like, coaches share information about players all the time. And it's all about who you know, right? And there's going to be a lot of information being passed after this. Like, you didn't know that those 3 guys are going to be good practice players, because they are, and they're just good guys in general. They're easy to coach, all of those different things. I think they're definitely helping themselves out. They're not hurting themselves. That's for sure. So, and on top of that, they were literally in a game a week ago. You know what I mean? Like they're down there at Senior Bowl practice after completing their 16th game of the season. You know what I mean? So that by itself is pretty impressive. And they all got beat up, during that playoff stretch. So they're doing good things for themselves. There's no doubt about that.
I think Kiser's interception validates that stupid interception that was taken away from him in the Penn State game. Because it was almost, wasn't the exact same play, but he was making a play
Similar.
ranging in the same direction.
Yeah.
The other ball was thrown more on a line, and he just goes up and gets it. And, obviously the Penn State one was underthrown, and he made a great play on that one too. But, yeah, that's the end of my rant on that one.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, and CJ Carr are all vying to become the next starting quarterback at Notre Dame. So we're not going to talk about who we think should be the starter, who we don't think should be the starter, what that's going to look like. But on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your excitement level for the competition itself? Because I feel like it's the first time in a long time that there's a legit competition going on for the starting quarterback at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I would say, to be honest with you, yes, Angeli is going to be a part of this competition, but I think it's a two-man race, to be honest with you. I think
you went there. You went there.
I think it's Carr, Minchey. But between those two, my level of excitement would probably be overall like an 8 out of 10, because I think that this is a very pivotal or kind of turning point for Notre Dame football in terms of quarterback recruiting, development, and can they, officially kind of put their foot in the ground and go in-house. And I think CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey are alike in some ways, but they're also very different. And so I want to see them battle it out, right? I want to see, what CJ Carr can do with his arm. I think CJ or Minchey is a bit more mobile and would thrive more in kind of those more RPO type looks. So, I think if Notre Dame wants to take that next step, and win the national championship, they need a guy to step up at quarterback and be here for more than 1 year, be a multi-year starter, and take this kind of offense to some new levels. So I would have to put my excitement at an 8 or 9, to be honest with you.
No, I'm with you. I think it's an 8 or a 9 for me as well. I mean, this is going to be a legitimate competition. Like first of all, I'm going to be over it talking about it every single day, but at the same, that's why I want them to name a starter after spring, so we don't have to talk about it all summer. But we're gonna have to. So it is what it is. But that's what comes with a competition, right? And I think this is going to be the most fun. Like, how are they going to split the reps? What is it going to look like? What are we actually going to be able to see in the spring of these guys? Are we going to be able to take anything out of what we see? With the three of them going after it. Because. Steve Angeli is probably going to get the nod early. He's going to get first team reps. And then Minchey will probably get second team and Carl will get third team. So what does that look like? Are they going to mix it up when we're not around? That kind of stuff. So it is a turning point in Notre Dame football. They do need to make some waves with guys that they recruited and that they brought in and that they developed. And they have the perfect opportunity to do that with this competition. So, may the best man win, obviously. I've got who I think should win. You've got who you think should win. We'll talk about all of that. But the competition itself, I'm actually very excited about because I think it is a legit competition. I think it is open. I think some of the coaches are probably just like us. They probably want a certain guy over another guy. And we'll see who's standing at the end, so to speak, right? Hopefully they're all healthy and they get out of spring practice healthy. And I'm really hoping they name a starter by the end of spring, but I don't think we're going to be that lucky. So it's going to be fun to watch. That's for sure. It's going to be the first thing everybody wants to look at when they walk into practice. That's for sure. Because I know I will be, because I just love quarterback play. Let's talk about a little bit of college hoops. So on Saturday, John Calipari returns to Rupp Arena for the first time since taking the Arkansas head coaching position and spurning the Kentucky Wildcats. So do you buy or sell the Kentucky fans booing Cal when he is introduced?
Yeah, this is a huge sell for me. And anyone who boos them, in my opinion, is probably a loser, to be honest with you, because
oh, bam!
Calipari was at Kentucky from 2009 to 2024. And during that time, Vince, he had 410 wins and 123 losses. That's pretty mind-boggling. He has almost quadruple the amount of wins that he does losses, right? And not only is he doing that, like, that's very impressive, but at Kentucky, when you obviously have the most pressure, and I get it, he's getting all the recruits and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, he should be good. But, I mean, it's Calipari. He's the guy that's recruiting them. And then, on the flip side of that, outside of just what he did win-wise, he did win the 2012 national championship. He did go to 4 straight Final Four appearances in, 5 seasons. And so, I mean, the man was great. Would you have, if you're a fan, would you have liked him to maybe squeeze out another national championship or 2? Sure. But he still won a national championship. He still had a tremendous record. They won all the time. They literally, for every 5 games, they probably lost 1 game, right? And so, like, at the end of the season, you're talking about teams that are going 25-4, 20, like that sort of range. So, those are tremendous teams. And then the final aspect of it is, look at all the guys he got to the NBA. Like, it's still, yes, you want to win championships and do well for the university, but Vince, at the end of the day, it's about the players and developing them and getting them to their next mission in life, and that was the NBA. So, again, the amount of people that the amount of winning that he did, postseason success that he did, and how many guys he got to the league. You're a loser if you boo him. It's sometimes you just got to move on, and it was time for him to move on and get a change of scenery.
The paycheck didn't hurt either from your boy down in Dallas, but I agree with everything that you said. The only thing that I will add, and I guess it even makes it more impressive, is it felt like he had a different team every year.
Yeah, because they were all one and done.
Right. They were all one and done. And look, I don't subscribe to that philosophy, because I like watching college basketball and I like being able to cheer for, a Marcus Burton for 4 years or, whatever the case may be. That's just the first thing that came to my mind. It's what I like about college sports, right? And then you hand it over to the next guy, that kind of a deal. So the one and done thing I don't like, but he was able to have sustained success, basically turning over his entire roster from year to year to year. Like that, I don't care how much talent you have, because obviously he was a cultivator of talent.
They're also young kids. These are kids right out of high school.
Exactly. And that's where they ran into issues, is when they would go up against a team with like a bunch of seniors on it, that had been playing for 3 years together. That's where they would run into some problems. But it's still impressive that they won as many games as they did with basically a bunch of first-year guys every single year. I mean, that's just, like I said, it's just not an easy thing to do. So, don't boo the guy. Be happy that he brought the success that he did to Kentucky, because they weren't really having it before he got there like they had it when he was there. And have they had it since? That's the next question. All right. A couple more here, and then we'll get out of here. So, Mr. Respected Cam Newton was asked whether he would trade his MVP trophy for a Super Bowl trophy. Here's his response. Quote, "I'm taking individual success because I did my job." Unquote. His response to you is blank.
Is undoubtedly selfish, Vince. And I don't know about you, but my starting quarterback, a guy that's supposed to lead my franchise, if he's more concerned about winning an MVP because he did his job compared to winning a Super Bowl title as a team, then quite frankly, that's not my quarterback anymore, right? Like, I don't care how good you are. If you're more worried about your MVP and your personal stats and, well, I can't really control outside of, my lane because I did my job or whatever. That's just, it sounds like a bunch of excuses. And it sounds like a guy who is supposed to be a leader of the team and ultimately didn't lead to the best of his ability, right? Because good leaders, good quarterbacks find ways to, lead and motivate their team to kind of overcome maybe some of those shortcomings. And, I get it to a degree where he's coming from, but at the same time, it's all about team success over personal success. And so, am I surprised he said this? No, but it's just to me, there's really not much more. Like, there's not a more selfish statement that you can make as an athlete than saying, I'm more concerned about my personal stats compared to the team success.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like you're really trying to moderate yourself with this one.
Yeah,
you could really go off on this one.
Look, I'm not a fan, never have been, never will be. And, and part of that is because some of the takes that he's had this season concerning Notre Dame and all of that. I'll be the first one to admit it. He's not my favorite human because of a lot of those things that he said, but he is an incredibly selfish individual. He always has been. So I can't say that I'm surprised about his comments. I mean, if you just look at his entire career and the way he went about it and, Mr. Superman and all this other stuff, he's always been about himself. So I'm not at all surprised about that. The only people that should take offense to it are anybody that was ever on the same team as him.
Or if you were a Panthers fan and you really,
right.
you know what I mean? Like,
right.
You wanted your team to win.
Good call. Because
I mean, if that's your attitude, then it obviously had to be felt at some point, right? Like, I guarantee guys in the locker room, without him ever saying that, knew that, Cam cares more about himself than he cares about the team. Like, if that's the way you carry yourself, it's going to ooze into the locker room. So
exactly,
it's maybe it was never spoken, but it was definitely the writing had to be on the wall at some point for his teammates.
Yeah, I can't say I'm all that surprised. He's a very selfish individual and just proved it once again, frankly. So yeah, just very typical. And that's a hard guy to follow. Like, your quarterback is supposed to be a leader,
right?
He's never going to be in a huddle again, obviously, so he can say whatever he wants. But I guarantee you, Tom Brady's not going to say something like that.
He would never say something. Patrick Mahomes would never say anything like that.
Peyton Manning, like, name off your quarterbacks, your elite quarterbacks. None of them are ever going to say that. And I highly doubt, like, I'm trying to think of like elite quarterbacks that have never won a Super Bowl. I'll bet you Dan Marino wouldn't say that. He's not going to be like, I did my job. Like, no, he's not going to say that, Allen from Buffalo is probably not going to say that, if he ever won an MVP or whatever. Has he won an MVP? I don't know if he has.
No, but he might win one this year.
Yeah, it's possible. But
I guarantee he would have traded that MVP to beat the Chiefs last week.
Exactly. And Lamar Jackson, he's won an MVP before, and
he
I don't
doesn't care. He's pissed that they don't win a Super Bowl.
Right. So he's just, it's just something. I just not a fan. Not a fan. Glad he never played for my team. All right. Last one of the night. And I'm going to ask this, and then I'm also going to pull up the super chat that we had earlier. So the ACC is close to extending their TV contract with ESPN for an additional 9 years. Now, part of that deal would require Notre Dame to play 2 of the conference's quote-unquote biggest brands each year. So the biggest brands, according to them, are Florida State, Miami, and Clemson. So Notre Dame would have to play 2 out of those 3 every single year on some sort of a rotation. So do you buy or sell this as good for the Irish? That's the question there. And then the question from Tyler, thanks for the super chat, Tyler. Appreciate it. He says, do you think the new ESPN deal with the ACC will save the ACC? So
yeah, I mean,
ones. So go ahead.
To answer Tyler's question, I don't know if the ACC ever needed really saved overall. I just think what they're fighting is the Big Ten and the SEC want to be their own standalone thing. I think the ACC has enough to stand on their own, as long as basically, the Big Ten and the SEC decide that to leave, essentially. So, I do think that this is going to do well by the ACC. I think it's going to bring more attention, obviously, probably more money to the ACC, which is going to help them in the long run. And then to go back to your question, Vince, do I buy or sell this as good for the Irish? I do buy this as being good for Notre Dame because, obviously the ACC needs Notre Dame, right? Like they want Notre Dame to play their top teams every year. And the biggest knock on Notre Dame is they're not in a conference, but they do play a heavy ACC schedule. And so what better way to combat that by, largely saying they're going to play the best teams in the ACC every year, right? Like when you think of the ACC, you think of Florida State, Miami, and Clemson in football, the teams who are predominantly going to be the most successful, right? And
Right.
you look at Miami and Florida State; those are teams that Notre Dame already has history with. And we've talked before about how Clemson would be a nice kind of maybe a new rival for Notre Dame because of how much they play each other in the ACC and usually how meaningful the games are. So I'm all for it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with Notre Dame playing, the premier teams in the ACC every year, basically. I think it does well for Notre Dame, and I think it does well for the conference in terms of, ratings and getting the viewers that they want in these games.
People are always talking about Notre Dame needing to beef up their schedule and things like that. And so I have no problem with them playing, getting at least guaranteeing themselves to marquee names, right? Like,
yeah.
Florida State was awful this year, right?
They couldn't plan that.
But yeah, exactly. You can't plan that. And it ended up, it was the night game, right? At Notre Dame Stadium, everything was amazing. And then they blew them out. I mean, okay. But the Florida State Notre Dame name made that game what it is. And so I have no problem with it. I think it's good. I buy it. I think it's good for Notre Dame. It's going to help their strength of schedule.
Right.
Most years. Yes, there might be an off year where the teams suck, right? But as long as Dabo's in charge of Clemson, they're still going to be a good football team. Maybe they're not going to be elite, but they're going to be good. Miami is good. Florida State hopefully can get back to at least being good. And look, Notre Dame's not taking orders from ESPN. They're utilizing their agreement with the ACC. So if ESPN says to the ACC, this is what we want, then the ACC then says to Notre Dame, this is what we're doing. That's how it works, right? And Notre Dame does have to pay a little bit of a price, even though, again, I think it is in Notre Dame's best interest. Notre Dame does have to pay that price for having the rest of their sports in the ACC. I mean, that's just it's part of the give and take, right?
But now I think you get the best of both sides. You get independence and you get to play the best teams in the ACC every year. And so, like you said, it beefs up the schedule. It sells tickets, and everyone's eyeballs are going to be on the game, which is more exposure for Notre Dame. So I don't really see how this could be a negative thing, I guess is what I'm saying.
And Joe wants to know, does it force those games to be away because of the NBC deal? No, it does not force those games to be away games. Those games can still be home games. They're not always going to play Clemson, Florida State, and Miami on the road. Like, that's not going to happen. So they just want to make sure that the strength of schedule is where it's at, and you still get marquee matchups that they can talk about on a regular basis. That's really what it comes down to. So they will not always be on the road. So, all right, Jess. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of IB Nation Sports Talk. Thanks for hanging out on a Thursday. Well, you're always here on a Thursday. I'm the one that's hanging out on a Thursday.
Yes, you are.
But that's going to be kind of the norm here moving forward because of, women's basketball usually plays on a Thursday. And they are currently playing right now, Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. Do you got a score handy? Because I haven't.
19-18, Virginia Tech leads.
Okay, a little bit of a tight one. So everybody's going to want to flip over, get on your Odyssey app, look for Notre Dame women's basketball, listen to Sean Stiers do his thing. And we'll talk about it tomorrow on Friday Fire. So make sure you guys hang out with us tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So for Jesse, I'm Vince. We'll talk to you next time on IB Nation Sports Talk. Have a wonderful day, everybody.